tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Tell the RCMP who hired you. Let those people be brought to justice.
One of two hitmen hired to kill a former Air India bombing suspect is sentenced to life in prison, while the victim's family pleads for more information. Plus,
we would simply have to tie up vessels because there would not be a market.
BC's seafood industry urges you to buy local as it braces for possible tariffs from Donald Trump. And he's dropped his asylum claim and wants to return to the U.S., but a convicted January 6th rioter detained in Canada is still waiting.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. One of two men who admitted he was paid to kill a Surrey businessman 2.5 years ago has learned his fate in BC Supreme Court. 24-year-old Tanner Fox has been sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 20 years. Fox and his accomplice Jose Lopez were hired to kill Rapudaman Singh Malik, one of the two men acquitted in the Air India bombings. As Bell Puri reports, Malik's family says their questions are far from answered.
It was planned and deliberate, a contract killing. Rapudaman Singh Malik was shot 7 times at close range as he pulled up to his place of business. Less than 2 weeks later, Tanner Fox and Jose Lopez were charged with first-degree murder. Last October, they both pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. Neither shooter has revealed who paid them to kill Malik.
I'm asking both Mr. Fox and Mr. Lopez to do the right thing. Tell the RCMP who hired you. Let those people be brought to justice.
In court, Tanner Fox listened to victim impact statements, then stood to speak. In a soft voice, he said, "I'm sorry for the role I played in this crime. I'm sorry for all the pain and hurt that I've caused." About 100 supporters of Rapudaman Singh Malik filled the high-security courtroom. Before court actually convened, the friends and family gathered in an adjacent room to recite prayers. Malik's children say that's how their father should be remembered, as a man of kindness and peace.
That my father was charged with the Air India bombing is but one small part of his story. Why don't you refer to him as the man who was wrongfully accused?
In 1985, an Air India plane blew up over the ocean of Ireland. 329 people were killed. A second explosion in luggage destined for another Air India flight at Narita Airport killed 2 Japanese baggage handlers. 20 years later, Rapudaman Singh Malik was acquitted of all charges related to both bombings. At the same time, a Canadian government report concluded the explosions were carried out by Sikh Khalistani separatists based in Canada. Second-degree murder carries a mandatory life sentence. Tanner Fox will serve 20 years of it before he's eligible for parole. His accomplice is yet to be sentenced. Bell Puri, CBC News, New Westminster.
The lawyer for an American man seeking asylum in Canada says his client is now withdrawing his claim and wants to go home. Anthony Vo was convicted and sentenced to jail time for his role in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. But he headed north to seek asylum in Canada and was recently arrested here in BC. The CBC's Caroline Bargout has this update.
Vo has been in Canada since June 14th, 2024. That's the day he was actually supposed to report to U.S. officials to start serving that 9-month prison sentence. He was convicted on 4 misdemeanor offenses for those January 6th riots of 2021. So January 6th of this year, CBSA arrested him, and they said it was because there's no record of him actually entering the country. He was claiming asylum, but then, as we know, last week, U.S. President Donald Trump issued pardons for the J6ers, and he also commuted the sentences of 14 people. So I spoke with Robert Thibault. He is Vo's lawyer. Now, he says that Vo is clearly captured under this pardon, but that CBSA is not recognizing that. And he thinks it's because if you go to the White House's website, it shows the executive order, and then it shows the 14 names of the people whose sentences were commuted, but there is no actual list of people who've been pardoned. Here's Thibault.
Over 1,500 people who've been pardoned, none of their names are there. There's a few names at the top, and these people had their sentences commuted, no pardon. But under Part B, it says if you were at or near Capitol Hill. So Anthony clearly falls under that category.
Thibault says he should be allowed to go home. You know, yesterday he signed the papers that basically he's withdrawing his asylum claim. So the hope was that he would be on his way, but not so.
To further detain him any longer than is necessary may amount to a further wrongful detention.
Late last night, after we had already talked, he told me that he received a letter from immigration officials that Vo cannot yet withdraw his asylum claim and that he must first attend an admissibility hearing tomorrow. And that is to determine whether he's allowed to even be in Canada in the first place before he could seek asylum. Now, the letter says the minister is seeking a removal order based on Mr. Vo's conduct. This is distinct from any conviction or pardon. Now, Thibault believes that Canada is actually trying to get a judgment against Vo so they can remove him from the country and then prevent him from returning.
This is ABC's Caroline Bargout in Washington. BC's Seafood Alliance is pleading with you to buy local, be it halibut, cod, crabs, as Canada braces for possible tariffs from the United States. As Mira Baines reports, it fears such levies could seriously harm the industry here.
BC's wild-caught seafood is world-renowned, with about 60% of the industry's exports going to the U.S. But now U.S. President Donald Trump's threat of 25% tariffs on Canadian imports is looming large. The head of the BC Seafood Alliance says she's hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst as the February 1st deadline approaches.
I worry very much that we will be looking at layoffs in both processing plants and for fish harvesters. We would simply have to tie up vessels because there would not be a market.
Burridge went to Ottawa last Friday for urgent talks with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Agriculture Canada, and Global Affairs Canada. It's still unclear exactly what will happen on Saturday.
We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada because they're allowing vast numbers of people. Canada's a very bad abuser also. Vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in.
BC's premier has not ruled out countermeasures if those tariff threats go through. He's urged people to buy local.
When you're at the grocery store and you have a chance to buy a product right now, you're looking carefully at the labels to support Canadian jobs and to support Canada at this critical time.
However, selling to the domestic market will likely not be enough to manage the shock of tariffs.
We would hope that people in BC buy more halibut, and quite likely the price would be lower, which might be helpful. But I can't see selling a lot of our halibut to Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, because they have Atlantic halibut.
The BC Seafood Alliance says the industry is hoping for a reprieve at least until April to deal with American customers who rely on their products. The group says there's also some hope there could be an exemption for Canadian food products. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
The leader of BC's Green Party has announced she is stepping down. Sonia Furstenau took the top job in 2020 and served as MLA from 2017 to 2024. We spoke with our provincial affairs reporter Katie DeRosa about Furstenau's resignation earlier.
We remember election night. Sonia Furstenau did not get elected in the seat of Victoria Beacon Hill. She was beat out by NDP Cabinet Minister Grace Lohr. She took a risk by switching from Cowichan Valley to the Victoria riding. But, you know, she said that was for personal reasons. And I asked her today, does she regret that decision? She stands behind that decision. She said she wanted to stay on as leader until now to make sure that the Greens could negotiate a deal to support the NDP, which, of course, have just a bare majority. She said that the Greens were able to secure some of their priorities, such as community health care, affordable transit, below-market housing in the NDP's platform. And here's what she had to say about those negotiations.
And I'm stepping down today feeling a great sense of accomplishment, not only for what I achieved in 10 years in elected office, but for what we were able to achieve in that agreement.
And now the question was for the two MLAs, two Green MLAs, Rob Botterill and Jeremy Valeriat. Will they be interested in taking up the mantle of the leadership? Jeremy Valeriat will be interim leader, but both of those MLAs said they are not interested in seeking the permanent leadership. They said they just don't have the time commitment. So it'll be interesting to see who leads the party. It will be someone who's not an elected MLA, which will be interesting for the dynamics in the legislature. But, you know, the Greens are firm that they can have, continue to have an outsized influence in the BC government as they have had for the last, since 2017.
Katie DeRosa reporting from Victoria. He promised change, and he's here to explain more. Darius Madavi has our look at the weather. What is coming?
Change.
Thanks for wrapping that up. Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the sunshine today. We've got the sunshine tomorrow, at least here in southern BC. Then the change comes. So we've got that moisture streaming in up north. It's going to eventually make its way down the coast. You can see it doesn't look like much activity happening a little bit around Prince George. There is lots of precipitation, especially snow happening up around here too. We just don't have radar coverage there. That's why we have those warnings in place. Winter storm warnings, 25 to 35 centimeters around Stewart. We've also got 10 centimeters coming to a couple other areas in the north, like around Dease Lake. So plenty of snow coming there, and that precipitation is going to make its way down south in a little while. So again, enjoy the clear weather while it's here, because it's not going to last too much longer. We see that cloud start to move in tomorrow. We've got precipitation coming to the North Island, working its way down the island, spreading rain, and the possibility of some snow. But Dan, the temperatures are hovering right around zero for the next couple days, and it's very iffy. So if you want snow, keep your fingers crossed. If you don't, keep your fingers crossed.
Good advice. Thanks.
Thank you.
The public inquiry looking into foreign election meddling in Canada has submitted its final report. The commissioner says in spite of attempts by foreign countries to interfere in the past two federal elections, it did not affect which party gained power. But as Ashley Burke reports, the public's trust has taken a hit, and the commissioner is now trying to clear up a cloud of suspicion hanging over parliamentarians.
After a 15-month investigation, this commissioner says there's no doubt countries like China and India are trying to meddle in Canadian politics. But she found no evidence Canadian parliamentarians are conspiring to help them.
While I saw evidence of some concerning behavior, the evidence does not show any MPs plotting with foreign states against Canada's interests.
The government tasked Marie-Josée Augue with investigating foreign interference in the past two federal elections. She spoke to more than 100 witnesses, including the Prime Minister, his inner circle, and officials, and reviewed tens of thousands of classified documents. One of her jobs was to weigh in on an explosive report by a committee of parliamentarians with top-secret security clearance. It alleged that some unnamed parliamentarians are semi-witting or witting participants of foreign states trying to meddle in Canadian democracy.
Such phenomena remain marginal and so far appear to have been largely ineffective.
Augue said there are legitimate concerns about parliamentarians having problematic relationships with foreign officials, showing poor judgment, or acting naive. She said some may have benefited without even knowing it, but it hasn't had much of an impact.
Nor have I seen any evidence to suggest that there are currently so-called traitors in Parliament.
The commissioner was very, very straightforward.
This expert says that key finding throws cold water on the past report's allegation.
Now Commissioner Hogue has come out and essentially said, look, we need to step back, take a deep breath. The evidence is not as consequential or significant as we thought.
The commissioner also looked into how the government handled foreign interference and found that at times it acted too slowly to respond. Information sometimes didn't get to the right people, and called the government a poor communicator, saying there needed to be much more transparency to let the public know what was going on. She's now issued more than 50 recommendations and says that some of them could be addressed before the election this year. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
It's one of Canada's favorite agricultural supply stores, but Peavey Mart is now closing all its locations, while the beloved company is seeking creditor protection. Next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Uncover the good, the bad, and everything in between on CBC's new daily podcast, This is Vancouver. Join CBC host Stephen Quinn on an adventure to uncover the hidden gems and highlight the authentic local stories in your community. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts and never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox.
Five years ago this week, BC health officials announced the first confirmed case of COVID-19 in this province. It led to a titanic shift in our everyday lives. And it was a message delivered by Dr. Bonnie Henry, BC's provincial health officer. She spoke with the early edition's Stephen Quinn on that moment and what came next.
And trying to find the balance of protecting people and protecting lives. But we know in doing that, it's going to cause effects on people who aren't as at risk of the virus. And it was very challenging, and especially early on, before we had vaccine, that we've all been through a very difficult 5 years. Everybody has suffered. But we can support each other as we're getting out of this and we're facing the next challenges that we're going to face, because it hasn't stopped.
Henry says it's still important to be aware of other possible pandemics and says there are continued advances in technology to detect and protect against viruses like vaccines. A Canadian farm supplies staple is calling it quits. Peavey Mart, which has 4 locations here in BC, has announced it's closing all of its stores and seeking creditor protection after nearly 60 years in business. The CBC's Alexander Silberman explains why.
It's disappointing.
At Peavey Mart stores across Canada, shoppers headed in to find a bargain, met by signs announcing the retail chain's looming closure.
It'll be a big change.
We're going to miss it for sure.
Late last week, the Alberta-based company first announced plans to restructure, shutting down nearly 24 stores in Ontario and Nova Scotia. Then on Monday night, Peavey Industries LP, the chain's owner, told shoppers it would be shutting down nationwide, with some closures beginning immediately. In a statement, the company says it faced unprecedented challenges, citing record low consumer confidence, inflation, and rising costs. Though some say the mid-sized chain may have expanded too fast at a time in which it faced tough competition.
Brick and mortar is a hard game right now, no matter who you are. But if you have something that can be replicated online in cheaper, I think it's really tough.
Peavey Mart had 90 locations across the country. Its origins date back to the 60s, and it's been Canadian-owned since 1975.
I'm so sad they're closing. It's the best store.
Rural shoppers like Melanie Roth depend on the store for a range of specialty supplies, clothing for farming and gardening, fencing.
Love this store. And, you know, I don't mind going to Walmart and things like that, but I love going to places. This is what keeps a small town together.
Fans of Peavey Mart say the store was an essential service for many rural communities, making it easy to quickly pick up everything from a bag of horse feed to a piece of farm equipment. And when it closes its doors, many say their best alternative will now be to shop online. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Uxbridge, Ontario.
The highest court in the Netherlands has rejected a man's attempt to scrap his Canadian sentence for tormenting a BC teenager. Aidan Coban was convicted and given a 13-year sentence in BC for sexually extorting Port Coquitlam's Amanda Todd. That sentence was converted to 6 years by Dutch authorities, and he returned to the Netherlands where he was serving a sentence for other offenses. He fought to have the Canadian sentence reduced to 0, but the Dutch Supreme Court has now dismissed that bid. 15-year-old Amanda Todd took her own life in 2012 after being blackmailed and harassed online by Coban for years. Good morning. It was looking out from the harbor in Nanaimo. One last cold, crisp day in this exceptionally dry January before that change rolls in. Darius will have your BC-wide weather forecast coming up.
I'm Stephen Quinn, and I love living here in Vancouver, BC. It's a city with world-renowned beauty, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In our new daily podcast, This is Vancouver, we're exploring the diverse range of issues and stories in the city, the good, the bad, and everything in between, as told by the people who live it every day. Don't miss This is Vancouver, available wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you soon.
With U.S. President Donald Trump not backing away from imposing tariffs on Canadian goods, the federal government is planning a response which could include pandemic-level spending. As Kate McKenna tells us, the measure might deliver a potential reprieve for both Canadians and the minority Liberals.
Let's give this a whirl.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford is driving home the message Canada is not for sale.
I can't stress enough how devastating these tariffs will be on Ontario families, on Ontario workers.
Good afternoon, everybody. The latest signal from the White House is that Donald Trump's not backing down from his threat to slap Canadian goods with massive tariffs starting this weekend.
As far as I'm still tracking, and that was last night talking to the president directly, February 1st is still on the books.
More than 2 million Canadian jobs are tied to trade with the U.S. Politicians and business leaders are bracing for impact.
If a significant tariff is imposed, it'll bring the industry to its knees. That's the bottom line.
Canadian officials have been trying to dissuade the Trump administration for months, but there are challenges.
A lot of President Trump's nominees have not been confirmed, and there is legislation that requires them to be confirmed before they can actually engage formally with other governments.
For now, sources say the federal government is readying a multi-billion-dollar bailout.
People should get ready for a bit of a bumpy ride. We will need to provide assistance either to businesses or to workers.
It's a move that could offer reprieve for those individuals and perhaps also the minority Liberal government.
There are hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs at risk.
Opposition leaders have said they want to topple the government, but now the NDP leader says he's open to supporting the Liberals to pass financial aid, even if it means delaying an election.
If there is any desire to move forward, the government should call us together, like we did during COVID, and discuss a plan that supports workers.
Some premiers also say they'll work with Ottawa.
It's not about one level of government. It's about all three levels of government working collaboratively.
We're going to work to make sure that the federal government keeps to those commitments, that they treat this as seriously as they did the COVID response.
The week began with a big shock for big U.S. tech companies. A brand new AI chatbot out of China sent ripples through American markets and triggered a plunge in U.S. tech stocks. It's called DeepSeek. The new open-source AI language model exploded into the news cycle over the weekend. It replaced U.S.-based OpenAI's GPT as the most downloaded app on Apple's store. Perhaps most significantly, the firm claims it's been able to do what U.S.-based artificial intelligence does at a fraction of the cost. Now, some users have been testing out DeepSeek for a few months already. Joining us is one of those users, Steve DiPola, a cognitive-based AI computer scientist. He is also a professor at SFU, where you formed that new department looking at human-centric systems of AI. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
First of all, you've been using it for a while. How does DeepSeek work?
Well, it's very similar to other large language models. So a large language model is just a chatbot. Mm-hmm. So many of your viewers would know ChatGPT. This is something that you can type a prompt into and get an answer back. This is right similar to all those, except it already is at the best of any of them, and it's cheaper and a number of other innovations.
When you say cheaper, what's the number? How much did it cost for them to develop this?
To develop it, it was $6 million, which is far, far less than typical. In fact, typically the idea is when you want to do this, in the case of Elon Musk, or what was discussed by Oracle as well too, is you spend billions on these data centers. This group did it in a way without needing that level of work.
And perhaps hence why we've seen this stock price plunge in the U.S. There's concern out there, isn't there?
Yes,
what they've spent.
There's three innovations of this new system. One is right off the bat, doing it cheaper. It's as good as the best any other ChatGPT. Two is not only was it faster to make, it's faster to use. So when you're using it, and these systems have to go up to a GPU farm and come back down, it's spending a lot less time. So that's less energy, good for the environment, but they can charge much cheaper per token. And the last innovation is that it's open source, and that's the big scary one. And open source is just something we do in Canada and other places as well. It means that anyone can use this and change it in any way. So we have companies already on a Montreal site. There's 400 variants of this. So if you could do it cheaper, better, faster, it really changes or disrupts all of Silicon Valley.
And really disrupts what the U.S., I think, saw as its dominance in this sphere. And this comes as the U.S. government was spending $500 billion on Project Stargate. What does this innovation, DeepSeek, do for that now?
It changes the story from it's the big tech pros, billionaires that say, we own all this, because no one has that kind of money, and therefore it's all ours. The rest of the world has to use ours and pay our prices. What we're seeing now is a whole group of independent way of doing it, and it has huge advantages. I think for Canada, it means that you could build these systems cheaper and easier for small companies, in cultural institutions. So it's changing everything from it's got to go to the central source, which was this kind of billionaire grouping, and now we could all do it kind of locally.
How do you think the U.S. industry, particularly Silicon Valley, is going to react? What do you think they ought to do?
Well, I think what's going to happen, and we're seeing in as little as 1 month, is it's the chance that the entrepreneurs are coming. So if you can do the smaller, better, cheaper, we're going to see smaller companies doing it. There's been some comments, no one can do this with less than a $10 billion company, and that's just not true anymore. And this is the advantage here in Canada, too. I think that we could build cloud services up here that would, that could use our hydro energy, so it's better for the environment, that is open, that has our version of privacy and security. So I think what you're going to see, whether it's old Silicon Valley or some new version, is a new fleet of companies coming in.
Steve DiPola, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Always great to chat with you.
Thank you.
Oil fields triggering tremors and tension on both sides of the border. Coming up, we'll take you to northern BC for a look at some of the ramifications of fracking. He's the man with the plan for a changing forecast. Science and climate specialist Darius Madavi at our BC-wide weather forecast. You were right.
I was right about the change. Beyond that, I'm a little bit worried about how right I'm going to be. I will say it's a very...
We're not holding... There's no money on the table.
Okay, that's good to know. It's a tricky forecast coming up.
No kidding.
We're going to see some temperatures hovering right around the 0 mark, both as our highs and our lows, which mean that the possibility of snow coming down to sea level is very much present, but by no means guaranteed. And that's going to be the story over the next few days. We may see some flurries coming down, but generally speaking, higher elevations definitely getting snow, so good news for skiers. Down here at sea level, it's a bit iffy. We've had that high pressure sitting over BC, keeping us sunny, especially down here in the south over the last few, weeks, actually. Next, we have that low pressure system that's sweeping across the north, so that's going to spread, or is spreading, some snow and precipitation up there. And next, we're going to have a low that's going to be coming down a little bit further south, bringing us some precipitation down here on the south coast as well. You can see that in terms of the amount of moisture that's feeding in. Most of it is going down further south of us, but we are going to get a little flick of that moisture coming in across southern BC too. So expect to see some fair precipitation on the way. Here you can see that up in the north. That's why we have those snowfall warnings, winter storm warnings up there or a little bit further north. As you watch it come down the coast, you can see it reach us here on the south coast, tomorrow reaching the North Island, and then continue to spread down through the day on Thursday. So expect, again, to see lots of rain and the possibility of some snow. You can see here the local mountains getting that snow. Vancouver, sea level, much more iffy. Once we get into Thursday, it starts being a possibility. I'd say the highest likelihood of getting snow at sea level is probably late in the weekend, but there is a chance for pretty much the next week or so at least. Early next week is looking quite wintry as well. Those temperatures, the big story is up in the north, where temperatures are falling quite quickly. Down here in the south, they're fluctuating a little bit, but not excessively, so not too much to talk about there. But if we continue to roll this forward, here we go. Our conditions for tomorrow, we've got lots of sunshine still in the south. I will say these icons on the island, I should have changed them. It's a very slight chance of a drizzle early in the morning. Other than that, mix of sun and cloud clearing up through the day, lots of sunshine there as well. So sunny last day of sunshine in the south tomorrow. Maybe the interior gets a little bit more sun on Thursday, but we're seeing that precipitation really start to pick up. Here's our 5-day forecast, Dan. A lot of chance of snow.
You know what that sound is? The sound of people thinking they need to put winter tires on. Fun.
Do it soon.
Yeah, good idea. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
Northeastern BC saw a record number of magnitude 3 earthquakes last year, and many have been linked to an increase in fracking activities in the area for a new pipeline. Now some are voicing concerns their homes and infrastructure are at risk. Susan Ormiston has the story that begins in Texas.
Everyone remembers the day the ground shook.
We were sitting on the couch and everything started shaking.
What did you think?
Immediately earthquake. Nothing else explained it.
Oh, it just shakes.
That was like the 4th one that happened. It was pretty crazy.
The biggest was a magnitude 5.1 earthquake rumbling through Hermleigh in Scurry County, Texas.
They say like the oil field around here has caused it, but I don't know.
About 9:30 on the morning of July 26th, an earthquake sent tremors through this town in Texas, jostling walls and rattling picture frames. There'd been a lot recently, much smaller ones, over 60 in the previous 7 days in Scurry County. Nearby in Snyder, Jay Calloway was on duty as the city's emergency management coordinator.
When it was coming, it sounded like a herd of cattle coming. And then it was just an eerie feeling, and then it sounded like the cattle was leaving.
What was your first thought?
There's a big one. What I was getting reports of is cracks in the walls, cracks in mortar, concrete cracks in driveways, foundations was the main damage that we've got.
And what do you think about suggestions that it was caused by fracturing by...
I have people ask me that all the time. I cannot give an answer. I don't know. That's above my expertise.
Snyder is the capital of Scurry County, and it lies on the edge of the Permian Basin, one of the richest oil and gas fields in the U.S. Hydraulic fracturing methods have spawned jobs and profits, but also earthquakes, not natural to Texas. In fracking, operators drill vertically and then go horizontally for kilometers. A sludge of water, sand, and chemicals is injected at high pressure, fracturing the rock, releasing oil and gas. But if that mixture taps a vulnerable part, a fault, the rock can slide and cause a quake. Fracking uses huge volumes of water, which have to be disposed, often by re-injecting the water back underground, and that's been a source of many quakes.
You see that one? This is another earthquake.
Alexandros Savaitis, a seismologist, can see small quakes pop up real time, getting data relayed by solar-powered monitoring stations throughout Texas.
All these red circles are the highest magnitude seismicity.
There are a couple of hundred of earthquakes daily, most of them small, under magnitude 1.5. But the oil and gas industry was slow to admit, he says, that quakes were a byproduct.
When I came here in 2016, they were in denial. That was really not the best thing. I think the last 5 years, at least, it has been accepted by both the industry and the public. Our eyes on a daily basis are on the Midland Basin. Midland Basin is our key area. We think that this is the area we might see a few more magnitude 4 and above earthquakes.
Midland is at the heart of the Permian Basin, and horizontal fracking has unleashed another boom here. Deep in the oil patch, engineer Steve Meltzer meets us at the Petroleum Club of Midland.
I felt that one, and it's pretty far away, and it was 15 seconds of motion.
He's a second-generation oil man working as a consultant now.
What does the general population think about earthquakes related to the oil and gas industry?
Well, they get nervous. The people get nervous. I get nervous, you know, and so we're going to have to be careful about the water disposal issue near the urban areas.
Meltzer shows us the newest fracking pad right in the middle of Midland.
We didn't ever think we'd be doing drilling and fracking in town, but it's become a big deal.
They'll drill down, then go horizontally right under the city. But he's more worried about the byproduct, those huge volumes of used water that have to be disposed.
This would be a water injection well, often called a water disposal well.
So underneath here, when the water's going down, how is it disturbing the earth to cause an earthquake?
Well, the deep ones, if the water gets into one of those fractures or faults, then it lubricates that fault and creates the earthquake.
Do you think this summer created any kind of a tipping point?
Well, we're getting close to it. I think if we have another one, 5 or better, there's going to be a lot of ramifications.
And Texas isn't the only hotspot. This is Peace River country in northeastern BC, in the middle of one of Canada's richest gas deposits, the Montney Formation. More fracking here is leading to more earthquakes. And Richard Kabzums has a big worry. He's lived here in Farmington with his wife and family since 1990. He first felt the shake 4 years ago.
It felt like a truck was hitting the side of our house and the engine rumbling. So this deep, low rumbling and things would shift. It would wake you up, and especially the first few times, you didn't know what was happening. You didn't have any experience. And again, with earthquakes, you just don't know. When will they occur? These yellow dots are all of the residences.
Now fracking is coming closer. A new site just over a kilometer from his home and near about 50 homes in the subdivision.
We are at risk. It's well documented. We've sent them letters and they've still approved the permit. So we are bearing the risk and they are saying, don't worry.
Gas production is projected to boom in the Montney Formation to feed a new natural gas pipeline. Coastal GasLink, 12 years in the making, promises to pump over 2 billion cubic feet of natural gas a day for a new liquefied natural gas terminal in Kitimat, BC. LNG for export to Asia, a first.
This is the Montney here. The blue dots are magnitude 3 to 4 earthquakes. Magnitude 3 is about where you could start to see some minor damage, such as cracking of foundations.
Gail Atkinson, a foremost seismologist, shows how earthquakes at magnitude 3 and above are at record numbers.
In 2021, we jumped up to 60 earthquakes of magnitude 3 a year. Last year, up to about 160. Because we're seeing about 10 times as many earthquakes every year as we saw up to 2010, we'll be seeing 10 times as many at every magnitude.
Wow. So does that mean that we're more likely to see a 4 or 5?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right.
There's already been warnings. 6 years ago, a magnitude 4.6 quake shook a massive dam under construction on the Peace River. This is the Site C Dam in northeastern BC. Back in 2018, construction workers were told to evacuate the area after a strong tremor shook the land. Critics say that infrastructure like this should be protected by a bigger buffer zone.
It's my view that there should be a buffer zone of around 5 kilometers where you just don't frack around a dam. It's just not worth taking a risk with a major dam.
They're actively constructing it today.
Up on the hill, Ovintiv, the large oil and gas producer, is building the pad for 28 wells. Drilling is scheduled to start in early February.
When you imagine that there will be a drill tower significantly taller than the trees nearby on a hill above our house, and the trees will not provide us a screen from seismic activity.
And he can't get insurance for earthquake damage either. 9 of his neighbors have signed a protest letter addressed to the BC oil and gas regulator.
I believe it was beginning of November, and I felt a rumble. I felt a shaking. And I thought, okay, where are they fracking now that we haven't been notified about? Right?
When oil companies, whoever they deal with, whether it's a settlement or fixing something on your property, you have to sign a non-disclosure. So you're not supposed to talk to your neighbors about what's really going on. And I think that's part of the problem. They muzzle everybody.
Ovintiv, the gas company, says that there is no threat from these fracking wells. Do you accept that?
Absolutely not. It didn't happen before.
Richard Kabsams is not backing down. He's written 6 letters to Ovintiv, and in a letter back, the company said, instances of induced seismicity show these events occur deep underground. Numerous studies in Canada have concluded these events have no impact on health, safety, or the environment.
I would say that statement is patently false. There have been damaging earthquakes that have been induced at depths as little as 1 or 2 kilometers, which is very close to the surface.
Ovintiv declined our request for an interview. The BC Energy Regulator says safety measures include constant monitoring. Any seismic activity in this area at magnitude 3 or higher means the operator must suspend operations and investigate.
It's kind of like closing the barn after the first horse is left. If you have one of those cases where it just lights up right away and gives you a magnitude 4 or a 5 as its very first salvo, the traffic light won't work.
The homeowners are running out of options.
What people don't realize is that there's a human cost to this gas, and the people in the Bell subdivision are part of that human cost. We are bearing a risk. Yeah, they see a reward, we see risk.
Tomorrow is Lunar New Year, and one thing bound to be on many menus, dim sum. After the break, we visit a local restaurant and learn to make dumplings. Stick around. Tomorrow is Lunar New Year, a day known for luck and fortune and food.
One thing bound to be on most menus are dumplings. Our Shivani Joshi visited a dim sum restaurant in Chinatown where she learned how to make them.
It's just a way of reconnecting to your heritage, reconnecting to your culture, and reconnecting with your family. You know, like a lot of us, we only see each other once a year or maybe like twice a year, and at those times, it's so important to reconnect with each other.
The Lunar New Year welcomes prosperity, fortune, and luck. But for many, it's the food that brings people together and keeps traditions alive.
At home, what we used to do was it was just pork, some peas, a little bit of cabbage in it, and my dad would get off work and then make the filling. We'd all gather together, and my grandparents would start making the wrappers.
No, take one of my good ones. For William Liu, the owner of Cam Wai Dim Sum, dumplings are a bridge to his heritage and his childhood.
My grandparents used to hand roll the wrappers, like hundreds at a time, pass them out to all the grandchildren, all the kids, and we just all get together, start wrapping them, and then and then we would just chat, have a good time, and that's what makes it so special.
Cam Wai was opened by his father in 1991 and has adapted to Chinatown's changing landscape as Liu efforts to make his culture and food accessible to everyone.
That's one thing that I try really, really hard to do here at Cam Wai. You know, people that are second, third, fourth generation that are trying to reconnect with their heritage come to Chinatown and they don't know where to start. I wanted to make sure that everybody had access to information, the knowledge, same knowledge that I have right now, and I want to be able to pass it down to the future generations. So all of our products have shelf labels with all the ingredients, so you know what's in there, what your grandparents put in there, just pushing it out.
As he folds these dumplings, he's shaping a connection to the past, to his family, and to the generations that will carry these traditions forward.
It just brings people together.
The dumplings William taught me to make are popular during the Lunar New Year because of their shape similar to an ingot, a gold bar.
We kind of like to think of it as we're stuffing our faces with little gold nuggets. And I've actually had friends, families where the grandparents would put a gold coin inside one of the dumplings.
Oh,
and whoever,
a lottery.
Yeah, exactly. So whoever gets it, they get all the luck for the year.
They're the luckiest ones.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool. Did you ever get it?
I never got it.
Oh.
I never got it. But that's why I'm continuing making all the dumplings.
Every fold, every filling holds a piece of history and a little bit of luck for the future.
Hey, it's actually pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Is this good?
She said much better, so.
Shivani Joshi, CBC News, Vancouver.
If I ever made a dumpling that good, I would be just as excited.
No kidding.
And now I'm starving. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, YouTube, and our website.
And we'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. See you then.